girl was eating so heartily that her face was covered in oil, all the while complaining about Roland being cheap and only ordering the cheap stuff. Phyllis, on the other hand, was enjoying everything on the table, even daring to drink the spicy oil broth, which startled the waiter. Later in the night, they finally made their way home. Phyllis suddenly noticed a figure standing in the shadows. Upon closer look, it was Garcia. Roland immediately knew he messed up. Garcia must have been waiting for him ever since he had hung up the phone on her. Standing in the corridor with an icy expression on her face, however, she didn't speak as if waiting for Roland to explain. It was Roland who awkwardly pointed at Phyllis, saying he was just taking care of a relative just like what he said on the phone. Garcia, on the other hand, seemingly unbothered, simply told Roland it was time to talk, and she then forcefully grabbed Roland's hand, dragging him away. Seeing this, Phyllis intervened, clearly not happy with Garcia's brusque demeanor, and even began telling her that Roland was the master of this world. However, Roland quickly covered her mouth before she could finish her sentence, leaving Garcia looking puzzled. Roland then urged Phyllis and Zero to go back inside first and promised he would return soon. Reflecting on what he did, Roland felt a bit guilty for ghosting Garcia and for making a poor excuse over the phone. Anyone would have been upset by this. Soon, he arrived at Garcia's door. Seeing it was Roland, she closed the door and pinned him against it. With a smirk, she asked if Roland had made up his mind, or if everything was just an excuse. Roland, nonchalantly breaking free from her grasp, walked towards the couch. Garcia, still looking quite upset, questioned whether Roland no longer wished to join their association. Sitting down, Roland asked for water, preferably with ice. Garcia's eyes flashed with anger as she went to pour him a glass of iced water. While drinking the water, Roland calmly mentioned the increasing reports of the fallen, noting he had encountered one during his lunch earlier today. He asked if the association was facing any trouble. Garcia, realizing Roland had been near the park, knew exactly what he was talking about. Turned out, earlier today, the incident prompted her and several martial fighters to rush to the scene. However, by the time they arrived, the fallen were already dead, and their magical core was missing. Hearing this, while pretending ignorance, Roland asked who it was and who killed it. Garcia shook her head, indicating the question was off limits as it involved the association's secrets. Nonetheless, Roland was on point, as the association was indeed experiencing difficulties as external corruption was accelerating, leading them towards an impending crisis. Hearing the word external corruption made Roland furrow his brows, and he pressed on to ask her to elaborate. However, Garcia let out a sigh, admitting that she didn't know either, or perhaps that no one did. It could be the end of the world, or it might result in everyone turning into monsters. However, she earnestly explained that it was precisely because of this uncertainty that the association needed more people to stand up against external corruption. She argued that it was the responsibility of everyone who had awakened power. Garcia's tone rose slightly as she became more impassioned, saying even if there might be sacrifices in battle, that it was a martial fighter's sacred duty. She understood why Roland might be concerned, but stressed that if every martial fighter hesitated or feared, then no one would be left to protect the people. Garcia's candidness took Roland by surprise, yet it was also apparent why she struggled to recruit more members. Roland didn't immediately respond. Instead, his thoughts drifted to the Red Moon. Initially, he had wanted to join the association for the fat paycheck, but it now seemed the situation was far more complex than that. He felt it might be necessary to leverage the strength of the Martial Fighter Association to uncover the truths of this world. After a prolonged silence, Garcia couldn't help but press Roland for an answer. Snapped out of his reverie, Roland casually mentioned that he would join. Hearing this, caught Garcia off guard. She was both happy and surprised. Nonetheless, from that moment on, Roland was officially a member of their association. Returning home, Roland explained to Phyllis about Garcia's identity and why she was important. He advised Phyllis not to take others' attitudes to heart, as in this world no one knew his true identity. Phyllis still seemed a bit troubled, but Roland had fulfilled her request, allowing her to experience being a human again, earning her genuine respect. This was the reason why she was displeased with others' lack of respect towards Roland, especially since this was the world he had created. Roland, with a smile, clarified that the inhabitants of this world had their own complete memories and thoughts, independent of Roland, and the world itself operated on its own rules. Hearing this, Phyllis's eyes sparkled up. She leaned in and whispered, asking if this was the world where Roland had previously lived, perhaps already suspecting the Prince of Great Castle was just a facade. Roland was taken aback by how she figured out, momentarily at a loss for words. He tried to remain composed and asked why she would think that, though internally, he was becoming gradually more anxious. Phyllis blinked and explained that it was because of the city of Neverwinter, the very city that Roland created, which was designed in a similar manner to this world. She had been confused as to why Roland planned to build a city like that, until she saw cars on the road earlier today, realizing the roads weren't meant for carriages, rather it was for cars. The tall buildings, machines, and powerful weapons all seemed to tie back to this world. Roland pondered for a moment before deciding to keep the secret about him getting isekai'd into this world. He explained that he was the real fourth prince, but that he had suddenly acquired additional memories. However, he only managed to possess a small portion of this profound knowledge. He hoped this could convince Phyllis. As for his deepest secrets, he wished to share them only with those closest to him. Phyllis seemed not to doubt his words in the slightest, even considering the memories a divine gift to Roland by the gods. Perhaps Roland was truly the chosen one. She firmly believed that with Roland by their side, they could surely defeat the demons. Roland was surprised that she suddenly became so confident, given that all they had done was go out for the day. Phyllis tells him that it is all because of the cars. In the Takira days, they needed a plethora of horses and carriages to transport military supplies to the front lines, which limited their reach. However, their enemies had a better logistical capability. Phyllis's assessment of strength based on transportation capabilities intrigued Roland. She elaborated that the cars and trucks they saw today could achieve what Takira could only dream of, and coupled with powerful weapons, they were sure to defeat the demons. Roland was impressed by the Takira witch's keen insight. The fact that she could deduce so much from just observing crowded buses and trucks proved just how smart they were. In the end, Phyllis stood up, she bowed deeply, and despite Roland not being a witch or capable of wielding the instrument, she believed he was the chosen one bestowed by the gods. Roland was happy to see that he could finally fully integrate the Takira witch into Neverwinter, and this would be very beneficial for future developments. As the day came to an end, it was time to return to the real world. Roland placed a ladder in front of the bed, and Phyllis climbed up step by step. Looking out at the world outside the window, she lingered for a moment but quickly recognized that it wasn't her world. She closed her eyes and let herself fall from the ladder back onto the bed, however nothing happened. It seemed that only when Roland left this world could Phyllis possibly leave as well. As Roland climbed the ladder, Phyllis approached him, having already guessed that there were two possibilities: either she would return to the original world with Roland, or she would be trapped here forever. Regardless, she expressed her hope that Roland did not worry about her. She would always cherish the memories of everything that happened that day. Roland nodded, then let himself fall backward. The next moment, he felt the weight of Anna's head resting peacefully on his arm, her lips curled into a slight smile as if she were dreaming something pleasant. Carefully, Roland extracted his arm without waking her, covered her with the blanket, and quietly left the room. Walking down the stairs, the soldiers who saw him all stood at attention, but Roland gestured for them to relax and proceeded to the main hall alone. There, he found Phyllis, who seemed a bit dejected but managed to muster a slight smile. Looking at Roland, she quietly said her dream had ended. Perhaps the transition from a god punishment which dedicated to fighting demons to experiencing a vibrant world capable of being a human again had understandably left Phyllis feeling ambivalent. Yet, she suppressed these emotions for the sake of her comrades in Takira and her obsession with battling demons. Roland admired her dedication and, with a smile, suggested that there might be a chance to return there in the future. He decided to continue experimenting and prepared a makeshift bed in the main hall with the soldiers standing guard by the door. Phyllis, sitting next to him, blushed slightly as she looked at Roland, who also felt a bit embarrassed as he closed his eyes. After a while, Roland fell asleep, and their light pillars merged once again. Back in the dream world, it was still nighttime, and Roland found someone lying beside him. Phyllis suddenly opened her eyes, incredulous at the sight before her. Seeing Roland smiling at her, she couldn't help but throw herself into his arms, tears of joy streaming down her face. At this moment, the distinction between dreams and reality seemed irrelevant to her. What mattered was that after centuries of suffering and duty, she was finally able to enjoy life. Once Phyllis calmed down, she stepped back, knelt on one knee, and pleaded with Roland to allow her to share this news with the rest of the Takira witches, promising that they would forever remember Roland.